Good afternoon, everyone. We have a very exciting panel over here on a very interesting and relevant discussion to the times. And we're going to be talking about how India can become the hub for trade, investment, and production, specifically manufacturing. And we have representation from all walks of industry and government. Um, uh, so I will be moderating this discussion. I manage the consulting business for KPMG. Have spent almost 2.5 decades working in banking, and then across strategy consulting and different areas, different sectors. Um, if you could introduce yourself as well.
I'm Lalita Indrikanti and I'm the CEO for Jagvalando JLR's capability centers.
Hello, I'm Mercy. I'm Joint Secretary in Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises.
Hello, my name is Alok Rumta. I'm the CEO and MD for Generali Central Life Insurance Company and has been in insurance for last more than 2.5 decades.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Deepak Jain. I represent the Lumax Group. We are largely a Tier 1 OEM automotive component supplier. I was the past president of the Auto Component Manufacturing Association. Currently also, I'm heading the CII Center of Excellence for MSM.
Wonderful, and welcome everyone. So let me just kick it off right there. I think it's been very exciting, very interesting times over the last 12 months. It looks like world has turned topsy-turvy. We are going through another remake of the global economic order. We are seeing trade being disrupted, new trade deals coming up, new alliances being formed when it comes to supply chain, production, supply of critical raw material. We are seeing manufacturing shifting places, new trade routes being created. So in this exciting time, I think it's quite interesting to see how things shape up for our country. And I think related to that, one of the key questions I had, and it comes up in many discussions around this topic, is traditionally we have been known as a sort of low cost hub for assembly of different components. Definitely, there is a big push to increase or share of value share in that entire manufacturing chain, and also get more into the deep technology sectors, which is the future. How do we enable this? How do we make this happen? So, Deepak, if I can start with you.
Heyman, thank you. And, on a lighter note to start with, it's not just 1 year of exciting time. I remember that all these geopolitical volatilities, supply chain resiliences, some disruptions going on somewhere in the world. I think it started maybe way before COVID, and COVID kind of accentuated it. So I think if I look at it from a global supply chain point of view and with all these whole geopolitical things coming in, I think India needs to very clearly on a manufacturing footprint kind of ensure that it's not just competitive on an industrial scale, but as an ecosystem, as a country, it is actually competitive on a global scale. I think if I were to talk about supply chain, let's say my business is about the auto components. And I think 46% of the value-added engineered products is actually done by the auto industry in the manufacturing space. Now, in that, I think if you're looking at engineered, yes, you're right. About 40 years ago, you were actually just built to print. It was talking about just low cost. But as the mobility also is transforming, and I think it's again an whole external global trend which is happening, where there is a future trend of autonomous, there's future trend of electrification, there's future trend of a lot more software coming and coding coming in. And hence, just to remain competitive, you need to go up the value chain. And I think in India, I think the auto component and the auto industry are probably best in class examples where in high industrial manufacturing, how they've been able to enhance their not just value add by assemblies, but actually by deep localization. And it could be not just on products, but now it is on processes and machinery as well as on engineering. I firmly believe that, and there is data to support it, where you cannot basically be competitive if you're just basically doing a build to print part on assembly. You need to have deep localization capabilities on engineering front. And, still if I look at it in India, the spend on R&D is about less than 1%. If I compare it with Europe, it's about 3.5%. You go to Japan, you go to US, it actually go about 100 bips more. So how do we actually ensure that we are enhancing our engineering spend and making sure that that qualitative engineering is also coming and speaking on new products and all that? And I think for me, I would just like to also add that manufacturing needs to be competitive. So it has to have a balance of basics as well as now whatever the future trends, or you can call it automation, industry 4.0, it needs to have a very, very firm, stable, quality-led environment. And maybe I'll leave you with a thought that when you look at India as a brand, what as our manufactured goods globally is the perception? Are we great quality? Are we great cost? Are we great economies of scale? What it is. I think we need to find that to ensure that we get a bigger footprint on the global value chain.
So Deepak, that's very aptly put together that, and what has happened in the auto industry over the last 4 decades is a great example, great template to follow. But I'll come to you, Lalita. How do we replicate this in some of the high tech sectors? Uh, Example could be whether it's electric cars, whether it's semiconductors, where we design a lot of stuff, but we don't fabricate, we don't do other parts of value chain. So how do we do?
Yeah, I think for starters, I would say it is not just cost to capability, but it is cost and capability. Because just because we are growing in the value chain doesn't necessarily need to take out the cost advantage. It will be there, it's given. That's part of the deal. And then we talk about the capabilities. I think from a definitely for us to establish that capabilities, I think it's a lot about how do you strategically partner and understand the broader vision and not just about what we are manufacturing. I think unless we collect, as they rightly said, in terms of the ecosystem coming together, and it is today we are talking about physical AI. We're talking about so much of auto industry. If you take about things are rapidly evolving with software defined cars, so the way how we look at manufacturing is also significantly changing. It's all about taking that end-to-end accountability, ownership, connecting. We may not do everything, but do we partner with people who can make the big picture, right? And yeah, that's all about it.
So quite interesting. If I can just ask a follow-on question regarding, so software is one area that we have led, in many respects. And when it comes to like even electric car softwares, like, what is needed more, or what is there to be done more in terms of us to lead that sphere as well? Like,
While we, we've been great, probably users or implementers of software. But I think the phases come where we need to be the creators of the software. I think that is what will make that shift, because rather than, as be it in manufacturing, design to print, or similarly in software industry, just take the instructions from somewhere else, take the design and code for it, to becoming the creators of the design is the part of growing up in the value chain. And that is what is important, that for us to get that capability part proven, you need to grow up in the value chain. So we need to really become a lot more creators, be it manufacturing or be it software. I think that own the outcomes rather than just the instructions.
so rightly said. I think we need to innovate. We need to become the designer and creator of softwares. And Mercy, ma'am, if I can come to you on. So one of the big P's around creating any manufacturing ecosystem is a large set of MSME suppliers that could come around. I think auto industry, Deepak talked about, was able to accomplish that over probably 2 or 3 decades. But that is something that any manufacturing ecosystem would require. And we do have, many MSME, but it's an up and down journey that we have been through. how do we get our MSME integrated in the global supply chains? How do we get them to produce a high quality of stuff that can compete in the global markets at the right cost? How do we finance them? How do we, what are some of the challenges in the MSME ecosystem? Would love to, if you could shed some light on this.
Thank you very much. If you talk about MSME, we number-wise, we are at 7.4 crore today, but largely it is micro. Now, the turnovers is from 0 to 500 crore, as you have already, as you are already aware of the redefinition. And so when we talk about the MSMEs, there's just huge segment there. And some of the challenges that, of course, our MSMEs are facing is when we say that 7.4 crore, but largely it is micro, then they, for quality and also to enter the global value chain, there has to be a lot of interventions required. So what our ministry does is, first of all, we are formalizing all the informal sector from the tier 2 and 3 suppliers, as you have mentioned here. And we are also giving them the capacity building. We are also introducing schemes like zero effect, zero defect, and also enabling the MSMEs to adopt lean processes and also to transit to cleaner energy, the green, the gift scheme which we implement. We're also enabling them to also have a diversification of designs and also enabling them to also become members of the various export promotion councils so that they can have an understanding of what the global value chain is. So we support them. And one of the biggest help that we extend to the MSME is, of course, in credit. And so CGTMSCS, you're already aware, and up to 75%. And also for the women, SC and ST, we are like at 90%. So those help we extend. Also, to start an enterprise, we are also implementing Prime Minister Employment Generation Program, PMEGP. So for the manufacturing sector, we're giving up to 50 lakh. And in order to have an inclusive growth, which means SCs and STs and women and Divyanjan, they need a special support. So for them, we are giving them higher subsidy, up to 35% if they are from the NER region, if they are women, if they are SC, and if they are in the manufacturing sector. If they are in the service sector, then up to 20 lakh, and in that, the percentage is again higher. And so we run some of these things, and also to enable them to enter the global value chain with quality. We are also having several schemes such as this technology centers and also CDP, the Cluster Development Program, where the entire value chain programs are there in one cluster. So this cluster is also one of our major program where we help the MSMEs to come in one place and then everything is accessible for them. So yeah, that's where we are. And recently, our ministry had conducted a campaign on cost and competitiveness. And I think more than 75 campaigns have been conducted. And we had at a cluster level, we interacted with the MSMEs. We also interacted with the industry associations. We understand what are some of the challenges and the gaps that they are facing. Because if we talk about India Viksit Bharat, we want to be a manufacturing hub. We also want to have a skilled workforce which are industry ready. We also want to also comply with all the standards that are there. And so in order to understand the gap, we did this campaign, and it was at the cluster level, and then it was at the zonal level. And now we have compiled the recommendations. We have also taken their suggestions and how we can do better so that we become we can achieve the vision that has been already envisaged. And so for that, we have collected more than 2,000 recommendations now, and we are now planning for a national one. So hopefully with all these interventions from the government side, our MSMEs will be equipped, have the access to the necessary help and support, and we can become the Viksit Bharat. So that's where we are.
But that's it's definitely a number of policies and initiatives by the government to support the MSMEs. But this is a very, very important part of the ecosystem. So I would like to come back to you to understand a bit more on how we push a whole bunch of MSMEs to scale up, higher percentage of MSMEs to be able to scale up to get to become more mid-sized and larger enterprises relative to some of our competitors or other countries in the world. Uh, but coming to you, Alok, you have spent a career, a lifetime in insurance industry. Insurance becomes more and more important as we become the Viksit Bharat or the developed country, largely to manage complex risks that are arising from all kind of different things, right from like the ecosystems we are building or the climate change to even capital formation requires a very sophisticated uh, setup of risk management. So, what's your thought on where is the insurance industry equipped, or are we building the right set of things in the insurance industry to prepare us for what's our vision in 2047?
Thanks for the question. See, it's a sector which has been growing consistently for the last 2 decades and since globalization, right? Now, let's look at what the sector brings on table for us to appreciate, right? So one is, and there are many parts of the sector, so I'll speak for all of them. Look at the life side. What we do is we galvanize retail money, right, and fund it for government large scale capital projects. So if you look at the GSEC market, right, 1/3 of the outstanding GSECs are subscribed by insurance, 2/3 are with bank. What are we trying to do? We are helping government for them to fund large scale projects for long term, because we are one industry which helps them in that long term matching of assets and liability, right? So you need money for long term. We galvanize people from the market for long term from a retail base. That's where we contribute in capital formation. So just look at the way the industry has gone in two decades. That capital formation support has come to the government, right, at large. If you look at other aspects of risk management, which you rightly articulated, there are many components of risk, right? Let's look at the MSME. How do we do micro insurance for this micro and MSME sector? Because their ability to take risk can grow up if they know they've been protected from a lot of risk, which is unseen and which can come, could be different kind of risk, fire, burglary, natural disasters, right? So can we create that environment for them where their ability to take risk goes up and they're more confident about taking risk, right? So that's where insurance, I think, also plays a big role. Another aspect of insurance also look at household protection, right? From uncertainties of health, from uncertainties of capital, which is lost because of medical reasons. So I think if you have a stable household, which is comfortable or aware that the risk environment is protective, right? Their ability to be more entrepreneurial just is enabled. And in heydays, can we chip in? And that's what, look at the amount of claims you pay. Even COVID was a great example on the health side where millions and trillions of money was paid as health claims. So I think that's where the sector plays a bigger role, right? In building confidence, in giving protection. And I think that's going to be critical mode. If you're looking at Viksit Bharat, we are looking at in growing our industries, right? Growing our infrastructure, physical as well as softer part. If there is a risk cover given to people at large, be it individuals or industry, I think that will enable people to do more, and that appetite will grow. And I think that's the role we play, is what we play on table.
Yeah, and we have seen the growth of insurance industry over the last 2 decades, and even I think reinsurance itself is I've recently seen is coming up well. So I think it's going through into an interesting phase. Deepak, let me come back to you on uh, how do we integrate better into global supply chains, because that's how most manufacturing has grown. And is China plus one our motto for next a decade, or will at some point of time we'll be looking at us becoming the first choice for certain industries or sectors or something?
Well, I think simple. Let me first take the China plus one. Personally, I don't like this China plus one because, you understand that the world went to China, not because of China, but what did it create as an ecosystem, a competitive, cost capable ecosystem, which gave quality, reliable products and services at a absolutely competitive pricing. That is basically a model which I think every manufacturing industrial nation should actually aspire to become. I think India has its own unique strengths. And I do believe that when it comes to industrial goods, there are and I'll give a small example. Let's say you talk about motorcycles. You have the world's largest motorcycle. You have China, who can actually come in. China has its own motorcycles or two-wheeler segment, but they're not being able to come in. You have the Indian manufacturers who've actually been leading this whole space and now exporting as well. So I think if you deep dive, they've basically got scale, they've got a great engineered product, a localized product from end to end. I think about 96% of the localization of products. They're actually doing a lot more tech enablement of the whole digitization, and they've got a great supply chain, tier ones, tier twos, tier threes. So that's a cost excellence model or a capability excellence model. And that's been, I would say, something which we need to replicate in all various sectors of industrialization. Coming into the global value chain, I think it's a very pertinent point. And I think I'm coming back to what I said about what brand India makes. When you're actually doing a domestic market, and what Alok suggested, the risk-taking capability of an enterprise actually defines on what are the policies around it. And the global value chain, it's very seamlessly integrated because we have a customer sitting, let's say, in US, and you have parts and goods being manufactured here. What is also the logistics turn? It's not just this. I think India, we know that there is a disability in the logistics cost. The government of India has been trying best to have a multimodal logistics solutions out here. But there are multiple things which, although enable a great export sector, but there are also certain disabilities, and we need to take care of those step by step around it. Last point is in terms of how do you integrate the complete MSMEs, the whole, the global value chain. I think we have a long picture to look. These FTAs help because directionally, that there will be more trade around it. And I think for us, as long as the GCCs, or you want to call the sourcing, coming in from India, but I'm coming back to the basic that India as a brand, does we have that resilience? Do we have the quality, the competitiveness, the scale? What are we actually make? I think we need to find that, and it could be sector by sector, and that's where we will actually go up more on the global picture.
So I think absolutely, Deepak. This is, one space in terms of you have to create. We have to create our own capability. We have to be known for something, and that should attract, business towards us. Would it, a follow-up question I have is around, would it be based on, you gave the motorcycle example. Now that largely came up based on domestic market, and there was a domestic market, and then we gained cost competitiveness based on domestic market, and then we became export oriented. China has also created some interesting products which are largely export oriented. We have, they have pressed down on the domestic consumption, invested more into overproduction across, and prepared certain industries purely for export. Do you see that model sustaining in the new world?
So, Hemant, as I said, it's an excellent observation. China went in a very different way. Build large scale for basically just capability for the world. We, in this sector, we are actually trying to take advantage of our domestic. The key point is scale. Where and how can you generate scale and economies of scale? And if you're able to generate economies of scale, irrespective of either domestic or export, then you have that manufacturing competitiveness. Simple. I mean, so if you have scale, you would have more automation. There would be less reliability on manpower for basically the mundane job. Doesn't mean that your manpower will go down. It'll actually encourage upskilling. And that's what we are witnessing in some sectors on industrial area. So I think that's where, we need to figure it out. And I think every sector may have come in a different. China is now looking more in-house because there is this whole geopolitical thing which is coming in, and it will continue. That kind of risk will continue to come through. So yes, I mean, so we need to, but how do we create scale at a global level? Build capacities. And if you want to serve the world, you need to build competencies.
Certainly, and scale allows you to also backward integrate into raw materials, all kind of supply chains. Absolutely. So let me come to you, Lalita. One critical component of this entire conversation is talent. Ultimately, We we do have human resources advantage. We could talk about demographic dividend, but we are also talking about high tech manufacturing and the kind of talent that's required for the industrial workforce, industry 4.0, automated factories. You know, uh, what what do we need to do there? Are we there? Are we on the right path? Do we need to do a lot more? Would love to hear.
I think we definitely need to do a lot more. And when I say a lot more, you have to really look at it short term, mid term, and long term kind of perspective. Short term perspective, we have the talent, but getting the talent industry ready is a big challenge for everybody. So, from that point of view, a lot of industry academia partnerships, academia driving what do we want, what is that which we can consume, getting our, you know, train the trainers kind of a thing, co-creating co-creating the curriculum at the industry. These are all can be really short term, where whoever is coming out is a lot more absorbable and productive, more the tech talent and all of that stuff. And from a mid, a little more mid-term perspective, the things is evolving so fast, right? So in terms of that predictability of the future of the jobs, what is that? Because if you need a skill, you can't create the skill today. You need to be paving way for it. So being a little more futuristic in terms of the skill requirements in the midterm is important. But I think the long term, this is something I'm very passionate about. We need a fundamental change in our primary education. I think I can't say more, because today it is so fragmented. And if you look at countries like which have been successful, be it China, be it Japan, and they look at their primary education is consistent, because it is not just about the skills, but it is the accountability. It is the personality you teach right from the beginning. We don't have it in our country. And there's a lot of private education, but the private education is also so fragmented. There is no consistency in terms of how we are churning out the students. I think we really need to start doing something now for us to be successful 20 years down the line. So reforms in the fundamental primary education, I can't stress more upon.
Just add is to, because this is exactly what we observed in our industry. Because when we are going rapidly, we are missing specialization, right? And we have started working with a lot of institutes to look at co-creation of syllabus, and with some kind of incentive that okay, we'll hire students from there if they are insurance certified. It applies to all line of businesses, right? I'm just giving an example. Like for manufacturing, vocational stuff has to be so deep, So at a gram panchayat level or at what level I'm really studying, but that is what is missing, as you rightly said. We have what 5 lakh engineers every year in the country. So if you look at that number from engineering perspective, you have a lot, right? But the mismatch is huge. What exact skill you need on the floor versus what has been certified is a real mismatch, right? Now that conversion of democratic talent or pool is where I think we're missing the bus.
I will also add, I think we've done a lot in terms of a telecommunication transformation. We have put a mobile phone in everybody's hand across the country, right? From irrespective that economic status, everybody has a smartphone. But today, are we utilizing that to transform some of the basic, fundamental, rural, educational related stuff or healthcare related stuff is something we need to seriously think through. So how do we divert people using those mobile phones to skill up themselves is something what we need to work on. And yeah.
No, this is one area that I hear about across sectors in all conversations. I think three repeated themes. One, the primary education and how do we get the foundation right. Second, around vocational training, and how do we expand that to not everybody needs to go to masters or bachelors, and that and I mean, the third piece around what you alluded to earlier, which is how do we create more research scientists? How do we increase the critical thinking of our school students? That is another thing that keeps coming up because nations have taken a very organized approach to creating critical thinking
Yep.
into students, and I think that's the path to research. So, ma'am, Mercy, I would like to come back to you on, you again, this whole industrial ecosystem, trade, everything is aligned around, somewhere dependency to MSMEs. One of the things that we keep hearing, and I worked in US, and one of the things the big focus used to be what percent of MSMEs eventually become mid-size or large, enterprises. Um, and there is always this question around Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh to say, you create, you preserve and grow, and then you let it destroy. Um, What's your thought around that? And I have a two-part question. So there's a second part around you talked about clusters, and that's another very interesting piece that all the manufacturing East Asian countries they had these clusters of manufacturing hubs of certain industries, right? And each of them had local governments pushing those, the equivalent of our state governments or maybe the local, municipal governments or something. So around both these areas, what are your thoughts in terms of like, kind of things we need to do or we are doing?
Um, as I said, when we talk about the MSMEs, micro, we are huge because we are more than 90% of the MSME landscape. Small is a good segment which we internally discuss at our ministry level, that we should give focus to the small so that their capacity is built that they become exporters. And how do we design certain interventions where they can be made medium and medium to large? So that's what we also discussed, how best we can do that. And I know MSMEs is everybody's baby. We are into so many line ministries, and that's what we look at that. And some of the things that we look at, for example, if a micro whose turnover is 10 crore um, has the potential to grow and become exporters, or they could be exporters, but then they can also, grow much larger than their present status. For that, we have growth funding, which is Self-Reliant India SRI fund. You are already aware of that. So we have already anchored it in NSIC, 10,000 crore from Government of India, 40,000 crore we are raising it from the market. So the total corpus is 50,000 crore. That's a growth funding because capital equity and all, they really suffer, the MSME. So we have created this very important tool for them so that they can grow. Another thing, I think this year also another 2,000 crore has been added to the SRI fund. And yeah, we have that. And also, in order to let the MSMEs access the technology, because technology is very important. Right now, we are talking about the disruption of AI and all that. So every MSME must now have technology in their enterprises so that they are able to have standards, quality, comply, and also cost, the cost vertical. So for that, we also have a credit link capital subsidy scheme. And this one, we are giving focus right now to SCs and STs. And so it is enabling the MSMEs to also adopt some of the latest technologies in their enterprises. And I think that will build their competency and also their capabilities. Regarding the cluster, yes, there are so many clusters that we built. It's also one of our major programs in the MSME ministry. And so the advantage of having a cluster is that right from raw material supply up to the finish line, and of course branding, the earlier speaker has spoken it. I think that is where we need to focus. So there is a special scheme called TEEN, Trade and Marketing Enablement for the MSME. So in that, we are also enabling the MSMEs to catalog their product and also get certification, the standards, and also branding as well, and packaging. I think when you talk about marketing, all these components are very important, and ministry has all these programs enabling building the capacities of MSMEs, and also allowing the MSMEs to have clusters wherever they are a champion in any scheme, in any of the states. And through that intervention, we see that they are able to also reach the export market.
Certainly, ma'am. And I think, the whole push around MSMEs and getting them to scale up, I think that's the path I think every manufacturing firm has taken at some point of time. And all the policies that we are doing to aid that, I think will go a long way. Let me come back to you, Alok, on another risk and insurance related topic, which is volatility. And we are going through a serious volatile time, whether in terms of tariff, whether in terms of like what's happening with, the currency, the whole, different pieces. On a lighter note, is there something called tariff insurance that, countries can subscribe to? But, jokes aside, would love to know, like, just your thoughts on how does one sustain investor confidence in a period like this where there's volatility all around.
I think this is the core of the existence today, right? Like, when US entered Afghan, they discovered this word called VUCA word, right? That was discovered then in 2013. It's been used more now in the business world. But that's a reality. I don't think anybody can predict what is going to happen. And actually, even if someone is predicting, it's not going on the lines of prediction, right? So the only thing I think always is how do you prepare yourself, right? And that's what we always preach, right? How do you prepare yourself for the uncertainty? Correct. I think we also need to look at the positive side of things. I think there's a lot of times we get carried away with negativities, right? Look at where the country stands today. We have a stable regime. I think that's a big one. After a very long time, we saw that our inflations are low. I think that's a big positive as well, right? Obviously, we have discussed the demographic benefits and dividends, but I think one of the things which is not helping is capacity utilization. If you ask me, right, we're still at that 70-75%, right? I believe with these FTAs, and with large FTAs with EU and US, because see, you do FTAs in many countries, but will they drive huge impact is what I'm talking about, right? I think these two economies, right, EU collectively and US also, are large ones, right? I know there's some time in which they'll come, but I think that will create a lot of demand, and hence a lot of these uncertainties and capacities will start moving on. See, end of the day, it's a cycle, right? Once the cycle starts, right, then you will see the vicious cycle coming. And I believe at this point we are at the cusp of, right, with some of these positivities. Also, if you look at, we keep on talking about high-end precision stuff. I think there was some logic to say how do we have PLI in sub-segments compared to others. There's a lot of noise then, okay, why are spending 10 billion on this thing? But I think the push was also to create awareness to the point of Deepak that what we stand for, right? So have we moved away from the routine toy manufacturer to a mobile manufacturer? Are we trying to be a semiconductor? I know designs happen a lot, but we are now looking at those thin vapor chips also. So these things are also constructing. Now, the point is the scale has not come, but obviously you have to start. And that's why, obviously, let's look at the positive sides also. There are steps which are taken, which are happening. And there is delivery also happens. So it's not only some are promises, we see a lot of LOI signed, like you said, the private capitalization has not happened, but every event, the number of LOI signed, the quantum is huge. But how much is actually certified is also a challenge. So I don't want to go by the LOIs, but I'm saying, but these things also should give you a lot of strength and positivity that are we in the right direction, right? And then always there are going to be headwinds and tailwinds. I think some of the headwinds have become tailwinds. That would, in the last month or so, that's the only thing which I see positive. That those headwinds have become tailwinds, and can we capitalize on that? That's what we should look at. And that's what I think our ethnicity is all about. We are very positive looking entrepreneurial people, and that's what the benefit we have. So we should look at that side more than anything else.
Yeah, look, and you rightly said this is a cycle, and if we keep a calm head, keep doing what we are supposed to do, I think we are on the right. So we are running out of time. I thought like I'll do some one or two rapid rounds and just get your quick thoughts. If you can just take a minute of quick thoughts on. We've been waiting for private capex to come back, and saw some green shoots over the last 2 years, but this year again, we see at least the forecast being down a bit. What's your thought on what else needs to happen can happen to for private capex to really take a positive long-term cycle turn?
Tariff insurance? No. No, I think, this whole conviction, and it's a issue of mindset and the mood. If you see today, there is so much volatility just on the mood. You have one news coming in somewhere, you just basically crash out. So manufacturing, in my personal, it's a boring job. It's a repetitive job. Keep on doing that and be calm and continue to start investing. And I think, as I said, for me, auto sector is a fantastic example where the capex is building up. And if you're actually getting more of private and public partnerships going in, I think it will just expedite and scale up on the campus.
No, I said it's a cycle. We are coming out of a cycle, I believe. Look at the way markets are also going to respond. And we'll have to also see how this entire AI piece is going to play on. Because is it a enabler? Is it a stress? And I think some are also caught on this. And I think as the cloud goes out on this, and I like what minister said in one of the forums that 90%, 95% of stuff can be done with small AI. Don't look at only big AI. And that's the reality we see in our business every day. We all of us have some part of it in some fashion, but we are only worried about the big one. Will it take jobs and all? So I think those things are also not helping. So I think with 27, I see more positivity because what we have done now, sometimes I say it's building blocks. So these building blocks, we need result. Yeah, capex should pick up. I will say in the last quarter of the calendar year, we will see somewhat more coming with all this discussion and decision coming in. And that's how we should keep on having that, the going concern rather than concern whether it is going or not.
I would go back to what Alok said at the start. It is the risk protection that is required for it to be picking up, right? I think maybe one thing which we can look at is look at some particular industries to be promoting more for that kind of thing. Because today it is so spread so thin, you don't have success stories. And if you don't have success stories, the investor confidence is very low, right? I think if we can pull it and bring it together and focus on certain sectors, certain industries, and divert it towards that and show some amount of success. And of course, with the rest of the tariff situations and all, it's stabilizing somewhere, maybe another year or two, we should see it picking up.
Yeah, certainly. Ma'am, your thought around while I asked all the private folks, but just slightly different tweak to the question for you to say government is doing a lot in terms of spending on infra, building the right things around. You talked about MSME in different areas, but one thing that we have really seen changing over the last, I would say, decade is the amount of private participation that the government is trying to bring into everything, right from defense manufacturing to policy to MSME to what's your thought on how is that being formulated? What's your thought on future of private government partnership into a number of these things as you work on MSME or as you work on different areas of government policy?
Yeah, I think in order to have a holistic development and also the Viksit Bharat, we all need partnership. Government alone cannot do so. It is academia, it is industry, it is the government. So if you look at the present government, we are aware that government of India has undertaken a lot of structural reforms like simplifying compliances and promoting also ease of doing business. We are seeing a lot of that. Also, infrastructure development is being pursued at coordinated and integrated manner through initiatives such as PM Gati Shakti, industrial corridors, and also cluster-based development. All these are, I think, enabling the MSMEs also as well as the industry. I think, it's in the right direction.
Thanks, ma'am. Just one last question. Again, quick comments if you can give on. We have heard a lot about the FTA deals and the big ones, and Alok, you alluded to it. Very quick comment on how would this help or go in a long term from the trajectory of the economy?
I think FTAs historically, whenever done, I mean, say it actually promotes trades and it would actually enhance the economy. I think what's symbolic is that you've done EU and you've done US, and you see the basic fabric of EU and US. It's very different. It's actually promoting about India. You know, EU, you can actually source a lot of tech. You can actually source and you can actually get a lot more of open market access into the whole EU conversation. And I think in US, I think it's not just tech. I think even US can actually get a lot more open end market in India. So I think it's been very, very smartly, I would say, devised. And I'll also just give you some stats on the component sector into the order. $80 billion sector. It's actually got about $23 billion coming in and export, $23 billion import. But in the export of EU and US, if I see, together we get 12 billion. So 50% of the export of the auto component sector is on these two regions. But both are actually having a positive impact on the Indian economy because here we're trade surplus. If you see ASEAN region, we actually trade negative. So I think that's what's very smart. And I think I think it's good. The trend is very positive and it will enhance the global value chain outcome coming in, at least from manufacturing.
So I like the point what she mentioned is about sector specific. See, when we went after electronics, right, we were big importers of electronics, right? Now we have started exporting. So these examples are also to showcase more. I think that's where the confidence goes up, right? If you can pick up a sector, go deep in the sector. Defense is another example. Like 40% is now indigenous, which was almost not there. Railways. Now I know some people. The way we have started building everything in India now, more or less on railways. So I think there is a sector by sector story. But yes, I think there's much more to done because these three sectors only cannot hold on. Auto component has been one which they are saying. But I think these things are where if the government is focusing deeply on each sector and debottlenecking, right? I think these three are good examples where they have really worked sincerely to debottleneck. And I think there was a report by Rajiv, who was the chairman of the Niti Aayog earlier, where he had a sectorial report on what to be done in each sector. So if we take this as a task to say, okay, each sector, what can be done? I think that will help. And I think they are working sector by sector, depending on the first target, I think, was on imports of police and currency. I think that was the target. But now it has to be more broader with FTAs and all. So that will help a lot. Because with each country, there are some areas where you will have give and take. And also this protectionist policy will go away. So you will also become competitive now. Because they will also enter your markets, right? So I think that give and take always improves the quality. So I always believe when there is competition, consumer is the beneficiary. Anything where competition there, consumer is beneficiary, right? So here if India is a consumer of imports and export, we will beneficiary as a market opens because we will have to compete also. That's where I look that FTAs are going to be get.
Whenever this kind of trade agreements, it provides three A's, right? One is in terms of your access to the markets, which Ipak talked about. And I think it's also important to understand that whenever we sign this agreement, it also comes with certain level of anchoring in our regulations and increasing and ensuring that our whatever we're trying to export meets the global standards. So this anchoring part of it is really upping the game, going back to your capability question at the start. And the third aspect is, of course, attracting. So the three A's is what I think all of it is very good. And it is just not signing the trade agreements, but how we are backing up with our tax regimes and other stuff in the back end, right? Because today, looking at the whole transfer pricing, safe harbor limits being expanded from 300 crores to 2,000 crores, these are all give certain long-term predictability for businesses to continue to invest in India. I think those are, so it's just not the agreement, but backing up with all other things that we're doing from the country perspective. I think a combination of this is fantastic. Great times to exist.
I think India is in a good position because we are a very strong democracy and we have a stable government. We are a young nation also, and opportunities are plenty. And I think with this kind of disruption in geopolitical scenario, we learn to also see with a new lens What are the new opportunities ahead? And so if all of us get together, government, industry, academia, put together our minds and do our best, I think India can become a champion.
No, certainly. And as a student of economic history, I would say, um, as we have looked at nations moving from emerging to developed nations, trade always had a big part to play. And I think whether it's the Southeast Asian tigers, East Asian countries, even US before Bretton Woods, is largely open, trade that used to happen. And I think what we are doing today probably is going to open a path for 30 years, for 20 years from now to get to on a different trajectory. But very insightful discussion. Thank you so much. And, lovely talking to all of you. Thank you.